Well, good morning. This is Jay Strack, and I want to welcome you to There's Always a Way podcast. And we've got an incredible friend and an incredible guest, David King. And David King, to me, is synonymous with NASA. David has been with NASA for what, 27 years? Was that right? 25 years. Uh, Obviously started, I'm going to ask him to walk us through a little bit of his journey. But I first met him when he was at Cape Kennedy, and he just began to rise up the ranks, more and more responsibility. And then I never will forget that moment when the Challenger happened. And then sometime later when David was made the executive director of Marshall Space Center. What a great honor that is. One of the most, well, we'll talk a little bit about how NASA does things. Being a Cape Kennedy guy all my life, a Florida guy, I wasn't quite sure what Houston and Huntsville did, but I soon got an education once you went to be the director of Marshall Space Center. And then, of course, David will talk also about the Columbia situation and your incredible role there. So I just want all of our listeners to know, in light of what just happened, it was hard to believe it's been that many years since America has launched someone into space and made that safe rendezvous at the space station, and the vehicle returned safely back to Cape Kennedy. So it was a great accomplishment, long overdue. I like us being in control of our own destiny on that. I'm sure you got some strong feelings about that.
I absolutely do.
But David, I want to open with, there's a phrase, there's always a way. And I ask the leaders that I have the privilege of spending time with, what comes to mind first thing when you hear the phrase or hear the term, there's always a way?
Well, 25-year career at NASA, that was the role, right? That was the goal. It was what we always pursued every day, and even in my career today. We're trying to solve really hard problems, and that's been a part of my career. And I'll just tell you, what got me interested in engineering and science and trying to solve those hard problems was Neil Armstrong walking on the moon when I was 7 years old. And I remember talking to my mom about it, and she said to me, what intrigues you about it so much? I said, I just can't imagine being a part of an accomplishment that hard. All the things that had to happen to make that work. And even as a kid, I was thinking about what had to happen. And I knew very, very little about what had to happen, but I knew it was complicated. And I knew that it was very hard. And I knew that they found a way. And so that's what got me interested in the life that I pursued and trying to solve those really hard engineering problems. And it's been fascinating along the way, working with some unbelievably smart people who just continue to pursue excellence at everything and make everything better every day. And I think if we pursue life that way, there is a way. You can always find a way. And I think God plays a huge role in that, in giving us ideas and thoughts that help us to deal with what's going on in our heads and in our lives that we just have to pay attention to. But there is always a way. It's what NASA has always done. It's what this industry has always done, and we just keep working at it until we figure it out.
Well, David, I'm a little embarrassed when I saw a man walking on the moon. I'm thinking, man, they go all the way to the moon and they hit a golf ball and drink Tang. I mean, that was, so I guess we were coming from two different thoughts running through our heads,
Yeah, but maybe so, some of us mature a little earlier than others in life.
Yeah. Well, hey, story of my life, by the way. Thanks for stating the obvious on that. David, in all seriousness, to think about a young man growing up, and how do you even begin to prepare yourself to be in a position to be with NASA? I'm always trying to remind our students at Student Leadership University that the future belongs to those who are prepared. And we, as parents and as educators and as leaders, we'd like to be able to prepare the future for our kids. We can't. All we can do is prepare them for the future. So as a parent and as someone who's been through the process, what are a couple things, if that son or daughter showing an interest or desire, a couple things you'd encourage the parents to encourage their children to do?
Yeah, I think number one, you have to do everything well. I think if you're going to do something, do it well. If you're going to go to school, do it well. If you're going to, play ball, do it well, and pursue excellence at everything that you do. And I think if you do that and you come at it from that perspective, there you can find the way. In the absence of that, you will fall short and decide not to take on the harder things in life, and therefore you won't accomplish as much. So I think if you pursue excellence, and you're going to fail along the way, I've failed along my way multiple times, but you learn more from your failures than you do your successes, as most of us know, and firsthand. And so you've kind of fail your way forward, as has been said before, but you also learn from that and learn how to do things better. But you have to always be in that pursuit of excellence. And then I'd say the other thing is you have to be curious. I was curious as a kid. I used to take things apart to see how they worked. And that's what got my curiosity up when I saw people land on the moon. Now, how did they do that? And started, trying to figure out how they did that. Didn't have the internet to do the research then, so I had to go to the library and do things like that to figure it out. But I was always curious, and I see curious people being the ones who take on problems that are interesting and always try to learn from it and try to understand things more deeply. And I think with that kind of mentality, you have a good chance of finding something that you can be passionate about and get good at. But you have to be curious and always kind of ask that next question of yourself and those around you.
That's a great observation. I asked an Imagineer one time, what can one do, as a young person? How do you end up being an Imagineer for Disney? And he said, if somebody's asking me what to start with, I'd tell them, go get an ant colony, put it in their room, watch them, watch how hard they work, watch the things they do together, collaboration, and watch, how the colony matters more than the one.
Yes.
And, I always thought that was so simple, but yet it was profound. And I love what you said. Whatever you're doing, lean in. I heard a saying the other day, no matter where you are, be there.
That's right.
And that seems like a good bumper sticker advice. Just be present and be alert.
I totally agree. And start where you are and do what you can, right? That's kind of the bottom line for a lot of things, right? And
sure.
If you do that day after day after day, before long, you find yourself in a position where you've accomplished something. I struggled in school, frankly. I struggled in engineering school my first year. And I went to my counselor multiple times and said, I think I want to transfer, to something else. And he said, just stick it out one more semester. And then before long, things they get easier for you, right? You begin to understand what you need to know and how to study and all those things. And so I think that helps tremendously to hear that from folks who've been through this, just one course at a time, one semester at a time. And before long, you look up and you've got that degree and you're thinking, well, maybe I should go get a second degree. And I think just kind of keeping your head down and working at it and being present is very, very important.
David, I thought of you the other day. We've been friends for several decades now, so you do come to mind time to time, especially when I need to drop a name or impress somebody. But a young man came up to me and I was kind of giving him a hard time, and he goes, well, you're right, Dr. J. This isn't rocket surgery. And first thing I thought of when he said that was, promise me you won't have any children. But then after that, then I began to think, well, I've got a friend who does rocket surgery. So there's a lot of parts, and I'm going to put you on the spot right now, because one of my favorite moments was you were asked a question about how do you best describe a shuttle launch. And you gave a statistic, and again, I'm really putting you on the spot here, where you talked about how many moving parts there were on a particular flight. And it was like as tall as the Empire State Building to me, just hearing the number of moving parts. And I'm sure it changes from flight to flight, and the more sophisticated everything becomes. But folks really have no idea how many moving parts there are and how many people it takes to be a successful launch.
Yeah, it really is difficult. I will say at one time when Space Shuttle was flying, we had 15 or 16,000 people working on it full time.
Wow.
We had about 1 million steps from the time one landed to the time we launched it again, about 1 million steps and procedures that we had to accomplish on average. And there's probably 1 million or so different piece parts on the shuttle, down from the diodes and the resistors on the circuit boards to, big valves that control the fluid flow to get the propellant into the engines, to the elevons that help it to fly once it's coming back in the atmosphere. So it's amazingly complicated piece of machinery. And it was amazing to me every time we launched. And it was a beautiful thing too, because you had such a tangible result of what you did for a living. Every couple months you would have a launch and you would watch a mission happen. You would see what came from that. And it was an incredible experience as a person to be able to see your work unfold before your eyes. And but pretty complicated. Simple things like 6.5 million pounds of thrust, and a 3 million pound vehicle goes straight in the air. It's just hard to comprehend that you can just push 3.5 million pounds straight up in the air and go from 0 to 17,500 miles an hour in 8.5 minutes. Go around the world in 90 minutes. So you're pushing the envelope of every technology and science that we've learned throughout our lives, and a very, very complicated machine, and fun to be a part of, obviously.
You've been through a lot, David. So let me ask you some of the, you were, if my memory is correct, you worked a great deal on the Discovery shuttle, and there were, different ships, obviously. And, so when you started, would you stay with Discovery the whole time? I mean, the launch and retrieval and then getting it ready again and again?
Yeah, for the first 6 years, I was a main propulsion, main engine guy. And then, and I worked on Discovery a lot, primarily, frankly. And then I went to run, kind of do all the planning for one to get it ready from the time it lands to the time it takes off again. And I was originally assigned Discovery, and I worked on that one for a good long time. So yes, watch every step, plan every step, make sure that everything's taken care of, go through all the reviews to make sure that everything is proper, all the technical requirements have been met. And then operationally, how do you get through a countdown, get the crew on it, and launch it safely?
Would you agree with me when JFK made the statement that we're going to put a man on the moon and bring him back safely to Earth? He said that before Congress, and then about almost a year later, he gave that famous speech at Rice University.
Right.
And I noticed something. I went back and studied it for this, our time together. But he made a statement I thought was fascinating. We stand here today meeting at a college that's known for knowledge, Rice University, in a city known for progress, which was Houston, in a state that's noted for strength, Texas, in an hour of unprecedented change. And he made that statement that in his life, and then of course, the great illustration, you've heard it no doubt 100 times, when he said, I have a dream that a man is going to walk on the moon and come back safely, that everybody really said, it's tragic. He didn't ever get to see a man walk on the moon. And they said the same about Walt Disney. When Walt Disney passed, before Disney World actually opened, they said, isn't it too bad, Walt? And the great line that comes, No, JFK did see a man landing on the moon. That's why a man landed on the moon. And Walt Disney saw Walt Disney World. That's why there is a Walt Disney World.
That's
So the
exactly.
power of vision is a great leadership trait.
Sure is. Sure is. And, I'm so glad he had that. I wonder how different my life would have been, and the things that I was able to witness, and that I wouldn't have been able to had he not. I'm sure we would have a space program of some sort, but I don't know that we would have the shoulders of those people who did that to stand on today and do the great things that we're about to do as well.
Well, Dave, let me ask you about you. There's so many unbelievable accomplishments, so much that we owe to NASA, I believe. I mean, I think that there's no way the world would be anywhere where it is today if it hadn't been for NASA. There's always been the argument, even from the very beginning, we've got so many problems here on Earth, we can't afford to have this luxury about going into space. And so a lot of things have happened. Now, first of all, how do you feel? And I know I'm talking to a company guy. I'm talking to a NASA guy. You believe NASA, but now we've got this unique partnership, SpaceX with Boeing and SpaceX coming together, getting that contract. How did you feel when you watched that? I know you were excited about the launch and us getting back to space and putting astronauts at the International Space Station. But was there any feelings uniquely?
Yeah, Jay, the biggest issue I had with what happened after Shuttle, ending Shuttle wasn't a bad choice. The bad choice, my opinion, was ending Shuttle before we had something to replace it with, so that we can launch humans from American soil to an American International Space Station. And then to go on to explore. So I think we missed an opportunity, and we lost a lot of time as a result. The good news is now we have a plan. Commercial crew has begun. SpaceX delivered 2 humans, one of which I know very well. I worked with him during the Columbia recovery. The other, my wife knows quite well. And so that was meaningful to me, for them personally, and on a personal level. But being able to launch Americans from American soil again, and have that capability, so that we can build on that and then go back to the moon, or go to the surface of Mars, or go wherever we want to go to explore, I think is terribly important for humankind. We always want to know what's over that hill, what's beyond that fence as humans. And it kind of gets back to the curiosity question, right? How does this really work? How big is this world? How big is this universe? And so I think if we continue to stretch ourselves and understand things, it's very, very helpful. And I think this is a huge step in the right direction for doing that. Hopefully Boeing will do similarly here before too awfully long, and launch their vehicle with their crew. And we're looking forward to that. And then NASA is in the middle of redesigning or building a space launch system, which is much larger and can take much more mass places. And I think that's what will really enable exploration in a lot larger way. And then they've chosen 3 teams in a race to get somebody back on the moon by 2024. Those 3 teams are Blue Origin, SpaceX, and this little company called Dynetics, which just got purchased by Leidos. And I'm very, very excited. I'm very excited about that. And so we'll see who gets down selected to go all the way to the lunar surface. But we're beginning work on that, and very, very excited about the path that NASA has laid out. It is a great path, and I'm just very, very hopeful that we can stay on it. It creates some great jobs. But more than that, it creates some great technologies that we would not otherwise have as individuals. Many of the technologies that we have the luxury of having today were developed and at least pushed forward by the space program. It also just inspires people. I mean, it's what inspired me to do what I did for a living. It inspires people to do like and take on harder things.
No question. Well, I love that big phrase at NASA: we do hard things. And you gave me a lot of opportunities. Gene Thomas, a gentleman I know that you knew quite well. But I was, as a young guy that couldn't carry the slide rule of all the folks that were out at NASA, getting sometimes small opportunities, but then other opportunities. And I'll never forget the privilege of being invited to Marshall to meet with the team that had been awarded the design and the privilege of working on the most exciting, sexiest project, if I can use that term today, other than Gemini Apollo. I would imagine, you know, those were pretty exciting days, Gemini Apollo. But then to be able to come up with a vehicle to go to Mars, that was, and then in the midst of it, Katrina happened. And I watched NASA, you know, I mean, this, you think of NASA as this sterile, you know, no nonsense, nothing stops us, here we go. But the minute the NASA family was affected in Louisiana, in Mississippi, I never even knew we had any kind of facility in Mississippi, but Stennis, I believe my memory is right.
That's right. That's exactly right.
I watched NASA absolutely on a dime open up their facilities in Marshall. And for all those NASA families that had lost almost everything. And then to watch the NASA, and of course, you know, I knew you and watched you in leadership, but to watch the NASA family begin to just open up their homes to other members of the NASA family that had lost wedding certificates and pictures of their mom or their, you know, their grandparents, and had lost every possession. It was really a moving opportunity. So NASA really is a family.
It absolutely is. You know, I grew up with a lot of those colleagues that I work with still every day, and absolutely adore them. And it is a very close family. We worked very hard together. We've had some triumphs and some tragedies along the way, and it has a way of bonding you together. And very proud of the folks that I've been able to work with.
David, I can't even measure, if you'll let me go back to a painful moment of the Challenger. I can't even imagine what it took for everybody to go right back and to begin to pick up, I don't want to say pick up the pieces, but you know, begin to work on the next mission. And while at the same time, how did this happen? And what do we have to do? I mean, can you walk us through a little bit of that?
Yeah, Challenger happened after I'd been working for NASA for a little over a year. I was pretty junior for that one. And I'd been working on a system that we knew we had a problem with. It turns out it wasn't the problem that caused the accident, but I didn't know that for quite some time after the accident. And so we all got to work on figuring out whether these 17-inch disconnects between the tank and the orbiter was the problem, and started searching data. You know, what I learned from all that, you just have to work the problem. You know, when something bad like that happens, you just have to start working the problem. You can't get, you know, too worn out about it, worked up over it. It was a tragic event, and we lost 7 wonderful lives that day. But, you know, they know the risk when they get on that vehicle, and things are going to happen when you're pushing the envelope of science and technology the way that we were. But, you know, you miss things. There are things that you just don't always, you can't always think of everything. It's usually the unknown unknowns that you can't fathom. You can't even fathom that something like that would be a problem, but it was. And so we missed it that day. And, but, you know, when it happens, all you can do is put your head down and start working towards a solution and figuring out what happened. And that's what the crews would have wanted, was for you to figure out what happened and go fly again. And that's what we've done on a couple of occasions now.
Well, David, you and I have talked about this, and I know you were quite close to the NASA family, and you knew Gene Thomas well, but as only could have it, you know, I happened to be in his office with him just for a brief time of prayer and trying to having no idea what to say. Ronald Reagan had one of the greatest lines, I believe, ever, when he says, there are moments when our emotions break the backs of our words.
Mm.
And I've never forgotten that, because that's what happens when you care about somebody and they go through a great loss. And the team had sent, the Challenger team had sent by snail mail. We use that term today, but
Yeah,
by
yeah.
snail mail. And so it arrived a couple days after the track, where they had all signed to Gene Thomas,
Yeah.
greatest launch director in the world. And, and they gave him a tribute. And I was there when he opened that package.
Oh, wow.
And it was a moment I'll never forget. And see a very quiet man and a very private man feel the weight of that responsibility. Just was a lesson in a profile and courage I've never seen before. So
Yeah,
go ahead.
when you dare big things, sometimes you have those kinds of things happen. And I don't think God made us to shy away. I think I'd rather be in the arena and fail than to never have been in the arena. Is a great quote about that too.
Yes, no question.
But Gene Thomas was impacted by that in a big way, as we can all imagine. But it does change us. But hopefully it can change us in a way that's for good as well, and help us to move forward.
To come full circle on that, I was in Israel. We had 4 buses for SLU 401, and we're going through Israel, and I got a phone call from Gene's widow.
Mm-hmm.
And she said, "Jay, I just wanted you to know Gene passed."
Yeah.
And it was so surreal being in Israel,
Yeah.
And he had such a love for the Bible and a love for the things of God.
He did.
Family in the ministry, So, well, David, there's another very painful moment that I know that has left a mark on you, but I was privileged to watch you walk through what had to be one of the most difficult assignments in the world when you got that phone call just moments after the Columbia reentry, and then to see suddenly things to go so bad so quick.
Yeah.
Tell us about that call.
I was sitting at home on a Saturday morning. It was the first time I had not been in a control room for a launch or a landing in probably 18 years, since I was at the Cape for that long. And drinking a cup of coffee, and decided to sit down and watch the landing on CNN, and saw the banner come across the bottom that said, "NASA's lost contact with Space Shuttle Columbia." And I looked at my wife at the time and said, life just significantly changed for us, for me, and for us. And within a half hour, I'd gotten a call that you mentioned. Hey, we think you're the right guy to go do the recovery. Go help us find our friends and start picking up the pieces, figure out what happened so that we can eventually go fly again. So devastating moment for me. I had a part of flying that mission and making the decision to go fly. And so just like Gene Thomas earlier in my career I felt about Columbia. But I kind of had to compartmentalize all of those emotions and figure out what to do. And started getting all the pieces together to fly out. We didn't even know where to go when we started. Took us about less than 2 weeks to find everybody, and then 3 months to find all the parts. The NTSB told me the day of the accident, if we found 10% of the vehicle, that we would be doing very well, which we knew it would be very difficult to piece together what happened if we only found 10% of the vehicle. We ended up finding 50% of the vehicle by weight. It was distributed over a 250-mile long by 70-mile wide area. I learned a lot about myself. I learned a lot about the people that I worked with. I learned a lot about America and the way they felt about the space program through that. But we did what we had to do. We didn't have a plan for that, and so we had to make it up as we went. And but it's amazing what resources this country can bring to bear on such a problem. And we were able to do that, and then eventually went and flew several more subsequent missions on Space Shuttle very safely. And I wouldn't give a day back of my NASA career. I would consider that one clearly, but you know, very heart-wrenching days and weeks, trying to deal with the emotion of that and still go do your job. But we had to stay focused, and we did, and that's what the crew and the families would have wanted.
Well, having the privilege of knowing you and praying for you through that time, it was one of those great, again, to use that phrase, forgive me, profile and courage, to watch you saddle up every day and walk through swamps sometimes to make sure you found your family.
And I can't tell you how much it meant to me, because I had just arrived in Lufkin, Texas, where we headquartered, when my phone rang, and it was some guy named Jay Strack, and he simply said, hey, I'm praying for you. That was incredibly meaningful to me, to have, to know that was going on. I know a lot of people were praying, but for you to make that phone call and to let me know was incredibly meaningful to me, and still is to this day. And I remember it like it was yesterday. So
wow.
Thanks for that.
Well, man, thanks for remembering that. But man, thanks for giving me a ringside seat. It's never boring, by the way. Somebody said, hey, is it cool to have somebody like David as a friend? I said, no, because whenever I got a problem and I get advice, he goes, you gotta do the hard thing, and then you've got to work the problem. And I don't want to work the problem. I just need an answer. What would you do? You got to work the problem. That was a phrase I heard 50 times.
Yeah.
And especially when you were talking about my golf game, I found it very, very disturbing that you can't work the problem.
There are things that, you know, sometimes we're just not good at things too, and we need to go find something we're good at. So, yeah, I think I worked hard to try to teach my kids and everybody I work with, because I learned it from masters, work the problem. And those folks that came before taught me an awful lot. And I think it's great advice. Just figure out what the problem is and start thinking of alternatives and solve it.
Well, David, I want to know more about your future. To hear that Dianetics is going to be a player, and of course, I know a lot is to be determined in the process, and
That's
the
right.
earning. You know, I've watched you, and you and I've talked about leadership 100 times, and I've watched the Lord just continue to promote you. But I know that leadership is earned. It's not a title. It's not a position. No one gives it to you. You got to earn it. And at every stage of your career, I've watched that leadership principle true, that you do well, really well here, add great value here, and then before you know it, you get opportunities to work on another wall, or to work on another project or another dream. So tell me now about Dianetics. Is one of the great defense contractors for many years in our country, but now is going to be involved in, and I don't, no offense, David, but y'all are going to have to work real hard. Elon Musk came up with the best name ever for a vehicle to go into space. That's all I'm going to say about the Dragon. But so anyway, you're going to have to top that name.
We have our own. We'll reveal them at the right time.
Okay.
I will tell you this. When Administrator Bridenstine called me to tell me that we'd been selected, he says, I like your style. I said, what do you mean? He says, you guys just quietly go do it, rather than talk about it a whole lot. And that's kind of who we are as a company. We've been around 45 years. Always pick the best people. And with the best people, you come up with some really good solutions sometimes. And so we've been solving really hard problems for the U.S. government for a long time. And it's a real joy. I've been here 11 years now. Hard to believe. I retired from NASA in 2009. We were just acquired by a great company named Leidos, and we're really happy about that and fortunate. And looking forward to so many synergies and opportunities that they will help us provide that we could not have done as a smaller company. But we've got work to do. It is a huge undertaking. It's kind of interesting that I started thinking about my career about landing people on the moon, and I may very well end my career with the same thing. Hopefully we can do it better. Hopefully we can do a great job with it. And we've got some stiff competition. Those other guys are very good, as Elon and his SpaceX team just showed this past week. But we have a pretty good team too, and I'm excited about what we can do. We have different approaches, so it's going to be interesting to see which approach NASA picks down the road as well. So we'll learn more about that in the coming weeks, and I can tell you that we're working very hard towards it as establish a base on the moon so that we can then go explore even more farther away places.
Well, having been privileged to be in and on some of those discussions and hearing about the role of, as a layperson, why go back to the moon? We've been there, done that, got the t-shirt. And then when you realize that those great big tanks on the side of the vehicles were needed just to get out of the Earth's atmosphere, the gravitational pull. I think it's like a 90-10 ratio or something like that, but with the fuel. And then to realize that from the moon, you could slingshot and go literally explore the universe and maybe, Lord willing, Mars. So it was fascinating. So when people go, why go back to the moon? I think there's several reasons for that.
Yeah, it's a stepping stone, right? It's just like life. We have stepping stones along the way, and the moon, the lunar surface, is a stepping stone. There are things that we can do that are there that are quite interesting that we didn't have time to do before, and I think we just understand better now. But it's primarily a stepping stone. It's about the journey as much as it is the destination, right? I mean, it's about continuing to embark and go try to do really hard things, and that's a big part of it. And you're right. It's curious that you can build a spaceship that weighs 1/10 of what it does when you launch, when it's dry. So 90% of the weight, 88% of the weight of a launch vehicle is fuel. So think about that for a few minutes, and it kind of hurts your head. How could you do that? But that's the way most of these vehicles are these days. They're mass fraction. So real challenging work and exciting to be able to be a part of it.
We have a lot of people listening to the podcast. We're excited. I'm very excited to have you as one of our very earliest guests, but a lot of different folks, ministers and businessmen and businesswomen, youth pastors, educators. It's been interesting, all the different kinds of folks who've been listening. So I felt like there's so much we can learn from NASA. I wrote down several phrases that come to mind. Number one, we do hard things. Number one, I always write by your name. And number two, it takes a team to launch a dream. The first time I really understood that was being around a lot of NASA people. It takes a team to launch a dream. And then there was a little project, and I was able to be a contributor to it. And they wanted to kind of have a team building manual for Cape Kennedy. But whether they was somebody that was doing custodial work or the man at the security gate, I mean, from the whole game, I mean, I was blown away that when NASA talked about it takes a team to launch a dream, every person had a significant role. And so when we began to talk about team building, they say, well, you do difference for different. No, we want a book, a manual that every person in every position will add value at that level, and every position is important. And so from the security gate on to somebody help cleaning up after, whatever, it's interesting. It does take a team to launch a dream.
It does, Jay. And, one thing is I think I learned early in my career was I'm not the smartest guy in the room most of the time. And you have to figure out how to work with others and play well and play nice and get things done together. you can do a whole lot more with that team than you can individually. And I've watched that through my entire career, and it's true over and over and over again. One of the things I think we all need to be good at is figuring out how to put the right team together, how to find the right people to do the right things, and then organize around it, and to be able to get work streams done and things done. So that's something that I think it's imperative for all of us to know and learn and study, frankly, because it's not a simple thing to put the right team together with the right types of people and the right experiences and capabilities.
Have you ever had to work on an assignment when you felt in your own heart, man, I should be the one doing that, but yet this is my role, or this is my lane, or this is my assignment?
More often than not, Jay, I was like, oh God, how am I going to get this done? Who can I get to help me? But yeah, I've been in that position multiple times, and what you do in that situation is you do what you can. You contribute where you can. You do your part the best you possibly can. And then, as you said earlier, if you do those kinds of things, typically you're going to get tapped on the shoulder and say, hey, we've got a bigger problem over here we need you to go solve. So what you can do is focus on what you have at hand, with the responsibility that you do have, kind of be obedient and get that done. And more often than not, those other opportunities will come your way as a result of that, because people notice it when you work hard and do excellent work. And I think that's been a theme that I try to reiterate with folks every time I talk to them about, the career.
And I'm sure that's what you look for now as you try to assemble another team, another going for the championship, if you will. So it never ends. I mean, the process never stops. It
doesn't. You have to be diligent and rigorous, and, pay attention to the details. And when something's bugging you, you have to do something about it, not just let it go. One thing I've learned is, most of the failures have been, I knew something, I didn't ask enough questions, I wasn't curious enough about it, I didn't do enough investigation, and I didn't take an action that I knew I needed to take, and I just didn't do it for whatever reason. And so, working hard and moving the ball forward and trying to, take initiative and do things is, I think, terribly important to the success of most programs.
Well, David, thank you for your time. I've interviewed several admirals and a general, and a gentleman, Jeff Stricker, who is kind of the hero of Black Hawk Down, the movie and the book, and he's in the Ranger Hall of Fame. And so with a couple of the generals or admirals or Jeff, with all he's accomplished, I called it leadership under fire. But knowing what I know about NASA, that's also leadership under fire, leadership under pressure, and leadership when the stakes are high. And so I'm so grateful for the wisdom. One thing I've learned about you look at everything, the good and the bad and the ugly. What did I do wrong? What can we do better? What do we have to do now?
Yeah. The life I've led kind of made me do that, right? I mean, those experiences, you have to think that way, and you have to learn from that and move on. I'm honored to be a part of those folks, and look forward to future interactions. I so much appreciate our friendship and what you do for us and for kids across the country to get them off on the right foot. And love hearing from you.
Thank you, David. David, thanks for all the times you've spoken at Student Leadership to inspire our students and challenge them. I'm so very grateful. We got a lot to talk about coming up in the future, so I'm going to be tapping you again, so don't get weary of me just yet. But I want to talk to you about the new Space Force. I want to talk to you about some new things that America is attempting. And yet at the same time, with the challenges we have here, I think some of the lessons we've learned from NASA and what we've accomplished so far in that illustrious history are maybe some lessons on what we need to do to solve some of the problems we've got here. So David King, thanks. I'm signing off, and thanks for believing there's always a way. Take care.